chances that I missed. Some I held, some slipped away. One street over where my memories exist. I wonder what would change, I really couldn't say. In this life there's nothing certain, except the curtain that rises to the stage. Silly games of second guessing, I just forget the lessons that I couldn't learn. Because one street over there's a life I could have known that would have kept me from the one I had today.
Good morning. It's Monday. What's going on, Robertson County? It is a beautiful day. This is 1100 WSGI, and I hope you enjoyed that little, coolness we had this weekend, because, man, it's going to be hot this week.
It's going to be hot this week.
It's going to be hot, isn't it, Bill? It's so
about
weird.
85 today.
I know. I was looking at the temps, and the forecasted temps going on into the, I think it touches almost 90. I think there was one day an 89 high.
I couldn't wait for this time
week
because I've got weeds. And some of the stuff doesn't work until it gets hot, like Roundup and things.
Oh, gotcha.
So I'm fixing to hit the weeds this week.
You're like, let's go. Let's get
Kill
this
some of the stuff.
Yeah, I gotcha. Well, Bill Jones is in the house. He is here this morning. We have, anytime we have a little break in the normal schedules and stuff, I like to try to give Bill a chance to come in because he's always interesting. Now, I did challenge him. I said, we need to talk about something interesting. And if you've got an interesting military story in Springfield, reach out to me, because May is Military Appreciation Month, and it ends, and then, of course, May ends with Memorial Day. And let's just kind of remind people the difference between Memorial Day and Veterans Day. Memorial Day is for those who died in combat, in service. I mean, it's not, I know we've got a lot of people who we like to, you'll see people put memorials up for their loved ones that maybe served in a war, but they did not die in service of that war. That's not what Memorial Day is about. Memorial Day is about people who actually gave their life for your freedom. And so then Veterans Day is for all the others. And am I correct in that? That's the way I've always understood it.
Yeah.
That's the way I've always understood it. So Memorial Day at our church, we will remember those who actually, we have several Gold Star families, and we will remember their loved ones on a display at our congregation. And so that's what Memorial Day is about. Veterans Day is for everybody else. And then Military Appreciation Month is the month of May. So I would love to feature some stories locally. I've got some openings toward the end of the month. So if you've got an interesting story from here in Springfield, please share that with us, and we'll bring that to you. But Bill has brought us, he's always fun. He's just always fun.
I got a story, a veteran story. Just thought about it.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I wanted to be a fighter pilot during Vietnam.
Okay.
Time. Well, they wouldn't pass me. I had medical showed up with a heart. I couldn't do it. So I wanted to be a navigator. Well, I couldn't read a map. So they put me in weather. So now we jump later. I was at a Air Force base. Well, I think it was an Army base, I believe, in South Carolina, Hunter Army Airfield. I believe it's where I was. And what we did, we gave information to pilots. They'd come in the weather service, we'd give them information. Well, I remember this one group that I think they were National Guard. They came in F-86s. F-86 is an old plane, old jet plane. And they came in, and they had cameras mounted in the bottom of the nose. And I thought, well, that's unusual. I hadn't seen that before. They go out and take pictures and come back. Well, we give them the weather. They go out and they come back in the afternoon, and they had the pictures of the underside of a bridge. Well, I immediately thought, how did they do that? And I asked the pilot, I said, how did you do this? And he said, well, we fly down the river and we flip over upside down, fly on the bridge, take a picture, and flip back. And I thought, I would never make it as a pilot because I'm not that crazy.
How fun, though.
Anyway, one of them later I found was killed doing that stunt. And I thought, well, that's, if anybody's been around the Air Force and military pilots, you know that fighter pilots are a different breed. Mm-hmm. They don't care. Some of them told me, said, I expect to die in this plane because that's where I want how I want to die, but I didn't think of that way at all. I
can't
wasn't ready to
imagine.
die, but being a young person, I had these ideas.
Well, and we had the Red Baron pilots came through before I was a mother, but I was married, and they wanted me to go up and try to do a traffic report from it. So I had an opportunity to go up with the Red Barons, and they did all the flips and stuff, and that was back when I was crazy, because it was open cockpit, y'all. I mean, it was nuts. So
yeah.
I did a few crazy things, but once I became a mama and had these little ones depending on me, I got much less
I know what you mean.
brave, and I don't know if it's brave. I became a little more careful.
Yeah.
But I love bringing Bill in. And you said that you wanted to talk about some jobs that don't exist
you asked
anymore.
me, let's talk about something. I thought,
Yeah.
well, I just grabbed the first. I've got all kinds of stuff laying on my desk. When I see it interesting, I print it off.
We could talk for a couple of hours. Is what he's saying.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought was something interesting. Jobs that no longer exist.
Yeah, I think
Can you think of any?
Think.
All right. All right. Let me give you a hint. When I was a kid, I went to McCord and Harris drugstore.
Okay.
On Main Street. There was a soda jerk there.
Oh yeah.
They don't have those anymore.
Well, now I don't know. They don't have exactly that, but just like the lunch counter there at
lunch counter.
You've got the lunch counter.
That just makes sodas.
Adam Callis runs that one up there. Yeah, but you know what I mean. So it's because as you said that, I thought, well, they don't really make wooden wagon wheels for but somebody is probably making something like that because people still use those old wagons.
Yeah.
And I started to say, I have a friend whose last name is Hooper, and he was on the campaign trail with me, and he loved to tell people about his name because it came from the hoops that were made for barrels. That's where his name came from. Yeah. So I got to thinking, there's no guy that makes that thing now, but it's still made because they still make those barrels because they're still making whiskey. So so it's just changed. So a lot of the jobs are still there, but they're just a different thing.
I think of something I know of. Have you ever heard of an Arabber?
No.
Well, an Arabber was somebody that traveled the streets of Baltimore mostly and sold fruit out of a wagon.
Okay.
Now, I remember when I was a kid, there was a Mr. Hamsley out on Darrell Pike. And my grandmother lived on Darrell Pike. And Mr. Hamsley had a truck, and he'd bring fruits and groceries by, and you buy from him off the truck. And I can remember in the 50s, in the furniture, there were people selling furniture off trucks and appliances and things. They would, they go to houses and sell them. Things, and you don't see that anymore. And sometimes I put a picture on Facebook of an old guy that has this wagon, has pots and pans, and everything is pulled by goats. Yeah, and he was called the Goat Man. He came through Springfield.
I have a painting of that.
Oh, you do?
No, in my office up at the church. As a matter of fact, there is a junk store that's across the street from the farm I grew up on.
Yeah.
A girlfriend of mine that we played basketball together, Tina Reese. It's called This and That, I think, or Anything Goes. Anything Goes, I think, is the name of it. She just I tried to get a T-shirt this weekend because I was there, but it says Junkin, Kentucky, and it's got bows on it. But nonetheless, she has all kinds of stuff. So I was in her shop one day, and this has been several years ago, and there's this sketch of the Goat Man. And I bought it, and it's on my office wall, and everybody's like, "What is that?" And
he was all over the place.
And he was a minister. I mean, he would.
Know that.
Yeah. I mean, if you look, if I'm not mistaken, I haven't looked him up. Oh, I'm sure he did. I haven't looked him up and read the story in a while, but I just found the painting interesting. It was actually a sketch. It's a sketch, but and it was all framed up, and I thought, I think I want that. But if I'm not mistaken, he shared the gospel whenever he would travel. So he was kind of a traveling minister, and but a vagrant, really. I mean, because it sounded, or maybe what did they call the guys that would come along with because they have a term for it, and I can't remember.
That did what?
That would share. That would have the housewares and.
They call them. Oh yeah. Oh,
there's a word for it.
Yeah,
somebody on Facebook tell us. But
know as well as anything.
Yeah, but peddler.
Huh?
The peddler.
No, that's another word. That's another word.
Is there another Okay, but
there was to me one of these days.
Well, and you'll see it on the Andy Griffith show still.
Yeah.
If you watch the old Andy Griffith, especially the early ones, they had a couple of those old kind of guys that would still come around. And but anyway, but yeah,
They don't have milkman anymore either.
well, do they not anywhere? Because I would think that in some, because my I never had a milkman because I grew up on a farm.
Yeah.
You know, we'd
Yeah,
go
well.
out to, well, we had a dairy.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
ran
Well,
a,
you didn't need a milkman.
no. And
You
so,
was a milkman.
no, exactly.
Milkwoman.
And so, but now we've closed the dairy when I was a child and switched over to pork production. But you know, my husband talks about the milkman.
Well, I can remember. I lived down on Connell Street, and they would deliver the milk on the step or front porch. And I can remember on top of the milk bottle there was a little white little cup that fit down in the top, and that was a cream. And you take that off and pour it down in the milk, and that was sort of neat.
That's weird.
But all my life, we had a milkman that came to the house and delivered milk and picked up bottles, and we would, as kids, sometimes fool with him, hide the milk bottles or something, But
and people on Facebook are saying that's called a tinker, the guy that would come around. A tinker? Or is
That's
that
not
more
the
of a
word I'm
handyman?
thinking
That's
of.
not the word I'm
No.
thinking about either. Peddler, I thought maybe was
Well.
it. But tinker, I think, would be more of a person that would make repairs.
There's a very common word used in the late 1800s and early 19. I cannot think of it.
Okay, keep thinking, y'all. That's he says tinker's not right, and
It's right, but it's one thing.
it's not the one he was thinking of. And peddler, I think, was the one I was thinking of. But you were talking about the milkman. I have got one of the old milk bottles from Pollard's Dairy, which was up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, where my husband grew up. Because my husband grew up, it's like a different culture up
He
there,
never
y'all.
grew up.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? But it is. I mean, the Upper Peninsula is just different. It's almost like a different country in many ways. But in his neighborhood, there was a dairy just down the street, and his grandfather owned a farm near there as well. And Pollard's Dairy would deliver milk, and we have one of the old milk bottles that's a prized possession of ours because it just brings back such a memory for him. But I don't know anything about milkmen or anything like that. We never had any of that. But so, what other
I
jobs do you
know
think?
Chamber of Commerce around here and the Kiwanis Club actually really supported bringing in a milk processing plant, and we had one called Purity Milk or something. No, it was not Purity. Purity Dairies or something like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, it helped the farmers, milk farmers, to
Have a place.
sell their milk. But anyway, that's then. Pin setters at bowling alleys. All these things I can remember, growing up, but they're no longer around.
Pin setters.
Yeah, they're automatic, at bowling alley now.
So they had pin setters that would run in. Well, and you see that in some of the old historical movies and things.
Yeah.
That they would run in there and
Wasn't
reset
too
the
old.
pins.
50s
Yeah.
and 60s.
Yeah. That's
Haberdashers.
What is a
Haberdashers is a person that sells hats.
Okay, I knew I knew it rang a bell, and I was like, I couldn't place
we used
it.
to have a store in town, the biggest store in town, called Randolph House, and they had everything. I went there for my Cub Scout uniforms, and they had people in specific departments, and they hired a woman just for women's hats.
Really?
Women don't wear hats much anymore, but they had to go buy. That was a buyer for one. They would call buyers actually, but they'd have their little corner downstairs. I remember in Randolph House, and Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts had their little corner of stuff, and they had one person over it, and they'd sell you the uniforms and all that stuff. And they had different people that would go to the markets in those type of stores. So Haberdasher is one of them that we don't have anymore.
Okay.
Town crier, in the old days there was a town crier, but there was somebody called an herb strewer. Now, sometimes I don't think back enough to put myself in what it really was like 150 years ago. But there was no flush toilets, outhouses. And
Yuck.
they didn't smell too good.
Oh my!
But,
I've visited. I've been in areas where we had. There was a Bible school teacher we had. We go over to their house, and they had an outhouse when I was a little kid.
Yeah, but I remember them around here. There was King George III over there. He employed an herb strewer named Mary Rayner, and she was a woman who spent more than 40 years scattering flowers, herbs, and other natural fragrances throughout the royal residence. to kill that smell.
So that was to get rid of the chamber pot smell and all of that.
They had it, so they had the
An
smell.
herb
How do you get?
stirrer.
We got sprays today, but they
How
didn't have that.
funny. So the herb stirrer.
It's called the herb strewer. STREW.
That's funny.
Now, along the same line, they had a person that had a job called a night soil man. Or night soil men.
What was
and
that?
I'm
afraid to ask.
I know, but that's the way things were. When you had these outhouses, they didn't have an endless, bottomless pit. They had to be cleaned out. And this guy would go along with a wagon at night and had a bucket with a long handle.
Yuck.
And he'd clean them out, put them on the wagon, and he'd take it to farms for fertilizer.
Oh, yuck.
And it was called a night soil man, and that was a job.
Oh, yuck. Yuck.
Telegraphers, you see in old Western movies, people typing, with a telegraph and taking messages. You don't have that anymore.
No.
Even though I'm a hammer operator and I know Morse code, some of us do, some of us don't, because it's not required anymore. It used to be required to have a test, but it's fun to operate Morse code. And once you learn it, it's sort of there all the time. It's like another language.
You see oftentimes in movies where somebody's in some kind of distressful situation and you hear this tap, tap,
SOS.
tap, 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 tap. That's Morse code.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, really?
Well,
how many people really know
I
that
can read
anymore?
them, and sometimes it makes no sense. They're just
On
and
television?
Sometimes it's silly stuff.
Yeah.
They're serious. Oh, the ship is sinking, and they're talking about, what are you guys doing over there? You know?
It's like, hey, we're just doing this for the movie. This is for the videography, and so that's funny.
Lamplighters are gone.
Oh, yeah.
They used to have window tappers that would go along.
Yes, I've
before
seen pictures of
long
that.
Clocks, yeah.
Yep.
They would shoot peas at the window to wake people up. Or they'd have a long stick and they'd tap on the window.
Yeah.
And usually a woman would do that. And sometimes either one. But they paid people to wake them up in the morning, tap them on the window.
I've seen historic pictures of a window tapper, and I was like, what in the world? And it had the explanation that it was, prior to an alarm clock. They come tap on your window with a long
their official
stick.
name? Knocker uppers.
I think I remember reading that.
Yeah, that was their official name.
Let's pause for a second. Let me do one of my ads. We're talking with Bill Jones this morning. He's just always fun just to bring in when we get a break, and there's just not a whole lot of availability until the end of the month, so I'm glad we got a chance to talk. We've got John Rose. Congressman John Rose is going to be on at 7:30. Dr. Chris Causey's tomorrow. Donovan Hilton's on Wednesday. Of course, United Way will be on Thursday. We're also going to have a visit with Lacey Bew because the Multicultural Festival is happening this weekend, which is fabulous. You need to go out to that. It's always wonderful. So lots going on, and we're going to cover it here on 1100 WSGI and One Street Over. I'm Utah Laverne. I want to talk to you about one of my sponsors. Let's talk for a moment about Barry and Rebecca Richards with the Exit Realty Garden Gate team. It is a crazy time for real estate. We had Barry in here the other day, and it's always insightful when you have him in studio and just kind of talking about the trends and what's going on. And he's a marketer. He came out of a marketing background, was a marketer in Nashville for many, many years, vice president of a marketing company, and went full-time with real estate a few years ago. And he's always been there to help his sweet bride, Rebecca. She's been at this game for a very long time. They're part of the Robertson County community. They've been up in Cross Plains for over 20 years, so they know this market very, very well. And he was talking about how that he sees it kind of hitting a plateau finally, but not really having the crash that's being forecasted for a lot of areas because this area is just so popular. Everybody wants to move here. We had Tommy Marsh in here on Thursday. He's a new transplant from California, been here just about a year. All kinds of folks like that, interesting folks that are moving in. And the bottom line is it's a hot real estate market, and if you are buying or selling, you need good representation on either side of the table. You're going to get that with Barry and Rebecca Richards. They've been at this a long time. They know what's going on, and they'd love to bring you into their team. If you want to be a realtor, now's a good time to tap into that and to have a good company that can mentor you with Exit Realty, over 100 realtors that you can work with and glean information from. It's just a great opportunity. Barry and Rebecca Richards, Exit Realty Garden Gate team, whether you're buying or selling, or if you want to be part of their team, you can see their specialty listings at buyrobertsoncounty.com. Now you can from there launch into all their listings, not just Robertson County, but they buy and sell in the surrounding counties across the state line up in Kentucky. But they are easy to find at sellwithbecky.com, sellwithbecky.com, or buy buyrobertsoncounty.com. And when you talk to them, always tell them U-Turn said, hey. Bill Jones is in the house with me, and we're going to continue to talk about all things that are interesting to him this morning. He found some stuff talking about some jobs that no longer exist as we're waiting for Congressman John Rose to give us a call at the bottom of the hour. So what else have you got for us, my friend?
VCR repairman.
Well, I suppose they're still around because I mean, some people still have VCRs.
We used to have
I do
TV shops
not.
all over the place.
Oh,
People
I know, yeah.
Not anymore. They're throwaway things.
Yeah.
TV
Isn't it
break, throw
weird?
it away.
It's
It is.
how technology just. I mean,
VCR same way.
Yeah.
We don't have them anymore.
yeah, I mean, you can watch everything you want
They're
on
so
your little
cheap.
telephone.
Go get another at Walmart.
Yeah.
Just throw it away.
And people give me CDs. I was mentioning Tommy the other day. He brought me a music CD. I download my music. I'm digital.
Right.
I download that stuff. It's a really cool looking CD, but I'm like, I don't have a CD player. I really don't. I mean, there might be one in my car, but I never use it.
I won one at Walmart several years ago
Yeah.
and never used it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just
It's hooked up.
Yeah,
I never use it.
I buy songs and download them on the internet. But anyway, go ahead.
Another one is called an aircraft listener. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Well, of course, that was World War II. And well, before that, World War One actually. Aircraft been around for a long time, but that started in the 30s. They would hire people to be aircraft listeners. They would listen for aircraft coming, and that's how they know they're going to have an air raid. And what they built was a long, looked like one of these horns you used to have to hear by. It'd be a huge horn and come down to a little thing, and they would listen to it, and it would amplify the sound so they could hear the aircraft coming. Or they also built big concrete dishes, and that would amplify the sound so they could hear the aircraft before time. That was before radar, so they would know aircraft was, especially this was used over in England.
I was going to say, I wouldn't think it would be something you would have here.
Because an Englishman
yeah.
developed radar, and
Right.
I can't remember his name. He had two last names, like something Weber or something like that. But anyway, before radar, they had watchers. People, if they flew over one town, going to another, people in that town would contact the other town by radio or something, and tell them.
Kind of like Paul Revere.
Yeah, it was just
Yeah,
a relay thing.
yeah.
We hear aircraft, they're German, and of course at nighttime they couldn't
Yeah.
tell for sure what it was. And so they had those people they paid to be listeners, aircraft listeners. And it's like a big stethoscope, that big thing,
That's hysterical.
And it's
I can just
strange.
see you can kind of envision it.
Oh, you see
know.
pictures. I've seen pictures of them. You can
Well,
look
you
on
see
the internet.
pictures of the ones with the horns when they're hard of hearing.
Yeah, it's
and
like
I've
that,
seen
but it's
that,
a
but
huge
it's like a
scale.
huge thing. Okay.
But just look it up. Aircraft listeners, I
Okay.
imagine that's what you'd look up to find something like that. The concrete things were called acoustic mirrors, and they were concave,
Okay.
like a dish,
Uh-huh.
but it would concrete, and somehow that gathered the sound. Another one I thought was interesting is called link boys. And have you ever thought, I was thinking the other day, Springfield didn't get electricity in town until around 1900. What they do before that? If you're in town, it's dark. You just don't go down the street and it has street lights. When they lit up the street finally in the early 1900s, they call them white ways. They would make from Main and Fifth south. When they finally got it lit, they call it a new white way in Springfield because everything was white with a light at night. People could be out and go to the saloons at night, but a link boy would be one who carried. They didn't have flashlights, carried a torch around for people to guide them home. So if they've been in a bar or somewhere, they wanted to go home in Springfield, nobody lived too far away where they could walk home. He would guide them home with a torch.
Okay.
And so he was called a link boy. And I don't know why that name link boy. But it was usually a low-class male that didn't do anything else. They'd give him a little tip or something, for taking them home.
There's a there's something that I read from Israel that they had that as well, that they would light the lamps and
Yeah.
things like that. And a lot of times it were homeless. And this is back in the
Yeah.
time of Christ. That there's something that I was reading archaeologically that talked about that, but it was typically children that had been abandoned or something like that.
Well,
I can't remember what they called
you've
them, but
heard
they
the
had
term-
a word for it.
You've heard the term "can't hold a candle to." That came from that because the guy was you can't
Yeah.
hold a candle to such and such
Okay.
because
Right.
the light from that link boy.
Okay.
And I was looking the other day. Each week I put out something to people on my mailing list. You're on there about hard scriptures to
yeah.
understand,
Yeah.
explaining hard scriptures. And one of them was there's two places in the Bible that this particular passage is said about that heaping coals of fire on your head. Did you read that I sent out?
I did not read yours, but I've studied
Okay.
that. I'm sorry, I didn't have a chance to read that.
Okay.
But what was your take on it?
Well, there's been a lot of different takes on it.
Yeah.
But I look at old customs and habits of Eastern times and Bible times, type thing to see what people did back then. And what in the morning, especially a cool morning, the little boy, like a link boy, would get up and he would have to carry coals around to start fires at the houses or tents or wherever they were. And so they carried things on their head. So he had a pot with the hot coals in the pot, carrying them on his head, and he would carry it around to start a fire. Well, when that term was used, heaping coals on their head to melt their heart, meaning he warmed them. Of course, he was warmed by that because it was a cold morning. He kept warm by the coals he was carrying. And so that meant you warmed the heart by somebody by heaping coals of fire on their head. It sounds awful, but it's really a giving thing,
Yeah, see, that's the take, because everybody thinks about, it's like going to be, they're talking hellfire. No, it's actually a kind gesture.
It's just
it's saying that you're giving them something to help keep them warm. Let me go ahead. I need to do my other break because when John calls in, I like to take as few breaks as I can when we get the Congressman on. Talking with Bill Jones. He is here talking to me about just things that we find interesting this morning. We're waiting for the Congressman to call, but I do want to pause and mention our newest sponsor. One of our newest sponsors is Veterans Motorplex. They will have racing again this weekend. They are in their season all the way through November. If you got to go out, message me and let me know what kind of fun time you had and who won the cooler. They gave away a big cooler this past weekend. Jerry's always looking for something fun to do, something interesting to do, and you're just never going to be disappointed if you get out there. They've got a special price. $40 gets in a family of 8. That's 6 kids, 2 adults. That's going on every single weekend. You can tell them that U-Turn sent you and you're going to get that deal. $40. They even discounted it even $10 more this past weekend. So they'll have special things where you can bring in and do different things to even get a bigger discount. But again, always, if you'll just tell them U-Turn sent you, you're going to get that $40 deal. That's 6 kids, 2 adults, $40. And the racing starts at 6 p.m. every Saturday night. The gates open at 4. I think they start qualifying at 4:30. Racing starts at 6 p.m. This is the old Highland Rim that we've known forever, but it's at 3183 Kelly Willis Road in Greenbrier. It's been refurbished. It is a great place, great fun to go out, great food and fun for the entire family, comfortable seating, just awesome time. So get out and go to Veterans Motorplex Saturday. Gates open at 4, qualifying 4:30. Racing starts at 6 p.m. And when you go by there, please always make sure and tell them that U-Turn sent you. Bill, keep talking to me until we hear from the Congressman.
All
He's
right.
here. What else you got?
Just a reminder about the Arabber. Arabber mostly were black people because they'd been locked out of jobs in the early 1900s, and they had a wagon and they sold fruit and vegetables. That was an Arabber. And if you'll look on YouTube, look up Arabber, there's several things on there about them. But anyway, another one along that same line was called water carriers, because people maybe in the big city and all, they didn't have wells. They had to have people bring them water. And so they had, these boys would, like Arabbers, would have a wagon, or men, and they would bring people water and sell them a bucket of water for so much money. And that's an endangered profession now. There's not anybody around does that. But
Well, they
probably
carry the
Eastern
tanks of
countries,
water and stuff to the farms and all that sometimes, I suppose. But
and they
yeah.
use leather buckets, just like it's talked about
Yep.
in the Bible, leather skins to hold water in.
Well, and in Mexico, we have to go get water.
Oh, yeah,
You
that's
just
right.
you
I
have to
forgot
go.
about-
We
yeah.
have, that's one thing, we have to go out and get bottled water every morning to cook with and things like that. So we still have to get water when we're down in Mexico on mission trips. So, but so we don't have it here, but down in
Yeah.
Mexico you do. What else you
And the
got?
last one I can remember in my old Henry and Bell furniture store when I was a teenager. If we wanted to make an ad, we had a bunch of lead letters type, and we'd have to set them all out, and they were upside down, reverse. So it's sort of a
Typesetters.
trick to do, and you set those things out to produce an ad, or big letters, small letters, and they had Linotype. Linotype, I remember Berlin Kleiner. I'd go up there at times off, and he'd had one of these old big Linotype machines. I think it's in the museum now, down in the basement. And they would, if you wanted to put a line in a newspaper, you had to put it in these lead letters in a Linotype, and they'd type it, and it would set the lead letters properly, and then you'd run this thing over the ink on it, and make ads. So technology has changed.
It's crazy.
Have all this stuff we can use to type things real quickly, which I'm glad.
It's neat. And I can remember typing reports at the radio station. I always did the FCC reports for the station.
Yeah.
And I can remember typing it on an old typewriter and having to use correction tape and all of that. And what a cool thing it was once the computers came in. We're waiting on a call from Congressman John Rose. He should be calling us just any second. Bill Jones is my guest. He is just my friend, one of my regulars, and so thankful when he wants to come in and join me.
John going to call in, right?
Huh?
Is John calling in?
He's calling in. I'm watching the phone line right here. So,
well,
you're
I'll stop
fine.
as soon as he calls.
Yeah, that's just it. Just keep going.
Well, you
because
just think nowadays, what have
yeah.
we got now that's going to go away? Can you imagine?
I don't know. What do you think? What do you think will be gone?
Probably cars that you drive yourself to the grocery store. They'll probably have little taxis that come get you and take you to the store, or bring the groceries to you.
Well, that's
the going thing now.
Yeah, with Amazon and everything.
Yeah, and I ordered the other day about 10 o'clock in the morning. I thought I need some ink for my printer. I ordered some Amazon. The guy delivers it at 6 o'clock at my house at night.
Oh, wow.
That is service. You don't even want to have to go outside your house.
Yeah.
And it makes us hermits, all this stuff. We don't get to go out and meet people. The Kiwanis Club had a pancake dinner, breakfast Saturday. It was the best we ever had. People were wanting to come out. They hadn't been out in a while.
Oh, yeah.
And even though it was raining and it was cold, we had a crowd and had a lot of fun. I saw people I hadn't seen in a long time.
I had family commitments.
We
had baseball. We were not able to make it. And Gina Holt had even given me tickets, and I just didn't get a chance to go.
The tickets were $5. You can't eat anywhere for $5.
Here's John, I think. Let's see if this is John. This should be John Rose joining us on the radio. John, you with us?
Call from.
John, you
I'm
there?
here.
Okay, there you are.
Here.
Good deal. I'm so glad you're joining us. I'm just talking with Bill Jones. I'm going to say bye to him, and he's going to exit out. Bill, thank you so much for joining me this morning, and I'll give you a call later in the month and be working on that military stuff. I'm just saying. See if you can find me stuff.
I'll do it.
But thanks again, brother. And we're here at 1100 WSGI. This is One Street Over. I'm U-Turn Laverne, and this is Congressman John Rose. Welcome, sir.
Good morning. How are you, U-Turn?
We're doing great. We're doing excellent. Did you take care of Chelsea yesterday for Mother's Day?
I hope so. I think he had a good day.
Yeah, look, I saw some pictures. So always, you've got such a precious little family. But so welcome. Thank you so much for making this a priority, because you're always available to us. I tell everybody when they want to talk, if they have any questions for you, just to reach out to me, because you're here the second Monday of the month, and we appreciate that very, very much. We're gonna miss you next year, brother. I'm telling you, you've really spoiled us. So, but
thank you. That's very kind of you to say, and I enjoy being on the show. And thank you for having me.
Absolutely, always. And I know that there's probably a lot of things you want to talk about, but of course, I think the elephant in the room is what's happening with the leak from the Supreme Court, what we're expecting, what's happening in Congress, because, on the backside of that, we start hearing that, Congress is talking about trying to pass a federal law to protect abortion, and could it pass the Senate? All of these things. And it's going to be the theme throughout the summer up to the general, I believe. Would you not agree?
I think it will be an issue that's on. I think the Democrats were aware that virtually every other issue was cutting against them. The president's performance and the performance of their Democratic majority in the Congress over the last year clearly is not working, and they knew that. Opinion polls make it clear that, frankly, they're in the worst position they've been in, in recent history, frankly. And so I think they were looking for something. that's why they don't want to talk about the the leak as opposed to the ruling, because they're I guess thankful that they've got something to change the subject with, because they're hoping that maybe this issue will resonate, at least motivate their base to come out and be for them, because frankly, the president's opinion polls, even with the Democratic base, is not that great. So I think they're happy to have a different topic to talk about. And of course, I don't believe that's the way the American people ultimately will view this. Certainly, there are different opinions about life and about the question of abortion, but I think the American people, have come around on that issue, and I think that the majority of American people will probably embrace a decision. But I think we don't need to get ahead of ourselves, because we don't know that's going to be the decision. That's an early draft, and obviously whoever leaked that opinion probably was hoping to influence the outcome. And so it may have been purely about giving the Democrats a political issue to use in the midterm elections. But my theory is that whoever leaked it was hoping to influence the court.
Oh, I think so as well. They were too prepared. I mean, the protesters were out there. There were already signs about packing the court, things like that. It seemed to be, it appeared to be very structured and somewhat planned. And so it was just it's just more of the same, unfortunately, when it comes to the conflict.
It really is, yeah. and it's. I think it. You may recall on one of my previous appearances on your show, I said it's a long time until Election Day, and I suspect that the Democrats will pull every dirty trick they can between now and then. And so if you weren't believing that they would pull every dirty trick they can, we see that now. And that's why I led a letter last week calling on the Justice Department to investigate this. It's interesting, I've heard so many commentaries on this in recent days, and one that I heard was that there's nothing illegal about this. Well, I beg to differ. I think that, we searched out the statutes, and I think there's little question that this violates federal law, in addition to being a violation of ethics and workplace rules on the Supreme Court. I think it is a legal violation, and frankly is a usurpation of the balance of powers, or the division of powers in our federal government. And so it's interfering with the court's ability to do the job that it really does have, which is to apply the laws and the Constitution of this country. And of course, if we turn to the decision that we see in this early draft, thankfully it's a return to sanity to some degree from the court, of actually doing the job that they are empowered to do, which is to apply the Constitution as it was written and approved by the American people, so many years ago.
Well, that's and the excerpts that I have not sat down and read through it, but the excerpts I've seen have basically echoed the things we've been calling for from the courts, and that is, not to legislate from the bench and to return state powers to the state. And and I know and there's some of us that speculate, well, could this be a launching point? And again, the statement or the opinion clearly says, no, this is just about Roe versus Wade. And so, and that's clearly outlined from what I understand. But it's going to be an interesting summer, to say the least. And this is going to be at the core of it, I think. But
I think so. And obviously, so many of us for so many years have been hoping that the Supreme Court would reverse the Roe decision and give this issue back to the people and to the states, which is where it belongs. And, maybe a prayer answered. But we've got to then keep fighting, as we know, because the ruling will in all likelihood return the question of abortion to the people in the states across this country. And I think then, we have a responsibility to stand up, and I think in Tennessee we will, but we want to advocate for life all across this country. It is really stunning to think about, and so saddening to think about the tens of millions of lives that have been snuffed out over the last young people who never got a chance at life. And I saw recently a quote from Ronald Reagan, and of course he was always so good at synthesizing these issues into really poignant quotes. But he said, "Isn't it remarkable?" And I'm paraphrasing. "Isn't it remarkable that everyone who advocates for abortion has already been born?"
Mm-hmm. Right. Absolutely one of his more famous quotes. But and again, I just is there, before we kind of step away from this topic, is there a push right now to try to push through a federal law in the House that they're hoping to? I mean, we know as it sits right now, things can get through the House that necessarily won't get through the Senate because you got a couple of rogue senators that are not voting along party lines. And so there's a little piece of the pro-life community that's a little concerned that they could push something through the Congress and that it might pass the Senate. Do you see any kind of an echo of that going on?
I haven't seen an indication of that. I think the only way they can do it is to throw out the filibuster rule in the Senate, and obviously Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema have refused to go along with that. I think this underscores, though, how important the elections this fall are, in that we can't continue to depend on two Democratic senators to be the block against the progressive issues that the Democratic Party is trying to advance. And so I think it's unlikely that they'll be able to pass something. And many probably saw the interview over the weekend of Pelosi on one of the Sunday shows, where she kind of continually dodged that question of, why did Democrats not pass a law when they controlled the Congress? And of course, the reality is that the Democrats, going back 50 years of Roe, have depended on the Supreme Court to get the laws in place that they wanted through the Supreme Court that they could not pass through the Congress. And I think abortion is emblematic of that movement that they have pursued, where they've used the court as a super legislative body. And obviously that's why they are so intent on trying to pack the court, because they want to continue to be able to do that.
Yes, and again, this is something we could talk about at length, I know, but there are some, as your office reached out to us for the interview, there was a couple of things that they wanted to talk about, and I've done my commercial break, so we're not going to break away. I'll do my last break at the top of the hour so we can continue our conversation with Congressman John Rose. If you have a question for him, by all means, put it up on comments and I'll share it with him. But to step away from the Roe versus Wade issue, your office, Dylan, had reached out to us and was talking about the bill that you're supporting that would defund Biden's Ministry of Truth. Can you speak on that a little bit?
Well, so in that regard, and by the way, we can talk about anything you want to, you sir. Don't ever feel like we need to focus on something that they've mentioned, but sure. So I think everyone has been hearing about this in recent days. If you haven't, you should go out and seek this out and read about it. But it's really stunning what the Biden administration is proposing, and we've been calling it the Ministry of Truth, and that reference comes from George Orwell's book entitled 1984.
Oh yes,
but it's actually but they've actually dubbed it within Department of Homeland Security the Disinformation Governance Board, and it's just kind of amazing, because the administration has proposed a board that will actually have oversight over things that we all say. So I guess they're worried because of Elon Musk's purchasing of Twitter, that somehow people are now going to be able to exercise their First Amendment rights more effectively. And so the government's going to get into the game of trying to limit what people can say. And it's really kind of chilling to think about this, because we all know that our ability and our right in this country, which is embodied in the First Amendment and in the Constitution, and that we have a right to free speech, but that doesn't suit the other side and this administration. They want to they want to look for ways to control that under the guise of limiting disinformation.
Yeah.
And so I have co-sponsored a bill that would take away the funding for that and remove a chance for the government to spend our tax dollars trying to tell us what we can say. And I would just point out to folks, this is one of the things about the rights that we have as Americans, and free speech being one of those, is that the rights in the Constitution give each of us the right to say things, and those things may be offensive to others among us. And certainly we have to sometimes hear things that we don't agree with or that we find detestable. And that's one of the prices that we pay for freedom. But it's one of the things that ensures that this country remains free, is that people can say what they want to say. And unless you're saying things that are somehow, understandably restricted, like fighting words or slandering someone else, where you could be pursued legally for that.
Right.
We all know you can't yell fire in a crowded theater and not expect to face some sanctions for that. But what I can do is I can say what I think, and it may be offensive to you. It may be offensive to me, and certainly I hear things all the time that I find offensive. And we have all learned that that's part of the price of freedom, just like we enjoy our Second Amendment rights, and there's a price for those as well, right? I mean, but the Constitution guarantees us the right to keep and bear arms, and perhaps that subjects us in some way to a little bit more risk of violence, gun violence. We understand that. That's part of the price, though, of having freedom and knowing that the population is armed and can protect itself against tyranny. And so, we've come to understand those things in this country, and we need to fight to protect them. And this so-called Ministry of Truth, or Disinformation Governance Board, flies in the face of that. And it's just shocking to me that this administration thinks they can do that. And the lady that they've put in charge of it, is probably one of the, she's one of the apologists for the so-called Russia hoax, and who had advanced those ideas against the former president. So it's really almost laughable that they've created this body and that they, with a straight face, are trying to put this forward at this point in time.
Well, and do you think, looking at the news with Elon Musk taking over Twitter and what that could, I honestly, as somebody who had pretty much just stepped away from all of it because I don't trust any of it anymore, and I when it comes to trying to find news sources, you have to just dig. I'm very excited about Twitter possibly becoming a true free forum again. And I've never been on, I'm on Twitter, but I don't participate. I will start participating in Twitter if everything that we're kind of projecting happens. But it could really be a game changer with getting out truthful information. You may not like the message, but at least it's a place where ideas can be heard again. And is there much talk on that up in Washington about what kind of implication that could have? I think it could be huge.
So we have it. Yeah, we were home last week, but yes, quite a bit of discussion about it. I think everyone is kind of taking a wait and see approach. Sure. Certainly, we hope that what Elon Musk does is to return, or bring to Twitter a more open, a greater openness, and know that I heard one of the radio talk programs that I listened to recently, that I listen to from time to time, that is just a program where, you're being offered tips on how to keep your computer running. And the host of that program noted that, the problem with Twitter and the other social media platforms is not that people say things that maybe aren't true or put out disinformation. The problem is that those platforms are systematically promoting the most inflammatory comments and statements as a means of ginning up controversy.
Yeah.
So, part of the problem with Twitter is not that I can go out there and say something that's not true and that might be offensive or inflame opinion. The problem is that Twitter makes sure that everyone sees that. because they know that if I come out and say something ridiculous and they promote it to the broadest possible number of folks, that then there's going to be a lot of backlash and retort on that, and so they are constantly, it's we all remember back to being in school, and the kids that would gossip, and so little Susie says something bad about me, and little Janie goes around and tells everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
And before you know it, everyone knows that something bad's been said. Well, that's what Twitter is, a gossip. I mean, that's what they specialize in, is spreading the most inflammatory statements,
and the truthful ones get silenced. And I mean, we've all had,
right.
we've all had situations where we've seen clearly that something that is a message that needs to get out gets stifled to where it doesn't get the same exposure, that the things that they have an agenda, and that's not what they're supposed to be. There's not supposed to be. What's the difference between a publisher and a platform? Isn't
Right.
that the argument? And they're not supposed to be an editor. They're supposed to be a platform, and they're violating
exactly
that rule of media in general. But anyway, we can move on from that. I know we've only got just about 10 minutes here. Want to talk about the economy? That was another subject that your office put out, and that's always interesting. It's scary. The gas prices. I was talking about my brother's. You farm. My brother trying to put diesel in the tractors and things like that. It's unbelievable, the difference. What kind of experiences have you had with the economy from the farm perspective, and what's your thoughts on that? Can you give us some insight, some encouraging words, maybe? I know that's kind of tough right now because we got, we're having to deal with the repercussions of the election. So, and it's not going to change tomorrow. So, what say you?
Right. Well, so I've been, I guess, sounding the alarm about inflation going back over a year now, and even many on the Democratic side foresaw what has now happened, and we're due to get the April inflation number here, and I think later this week, and so we'll see where we've gotten. But certainly, all anticipation is that we're going to continue to see inflation rising, and of course, you need to keep in mind that by historic comparison, we're really seeing record-setting inflation. The actual published number, 8.5%, takes us back to December 1981.
Wow.
When I was a sophomore in high school, and we all know, as we, at least in my mind, and I think most people who lived through the 70s and 80s remember that time and remember the runaway inflation then. And this inflation is really, some would say, worse than the inflation then. And if it was calculated the same way as it was back in the 80s, it would be higher than it ever got at that time. So everyone should keep that in mind. And how that affects Americans, I think, if it was calculated the same way, those of us who have to travel further to get to work, who depend more on fuel and some other expenses, the inflation's actually having a bigger impact even than the 8.5% that is the kind of published number. So, what causes that? What caused that is the government just put way too much money into the economy over, the period of time during and after COVID really had manifested. And we were arguing this last spring, really in February, when the Biden administration was trying to pass the American Recovery Plan, and saying, look, the economy has already got too much money in it at that time, and if you put another $2 trillion in, plus implement the other policies that President Biden was touting at the time that were going to discourage people from going back to work and further limit the supply of goods and services by reducing the workforce, we were fearful that would lead to inflation. That's exactly what happened. And so now we see the result, and we're beginning to see the pain of the antidote for inflation, which is high interest rates. So this past week, the Federal Reserve increased interest rates by a full 0.5 percentage point. That's the largest single month increase since 2000. So to give us some perspective about time. And so already we've seen home mortgage rates spike up by about 2%. And we're going to continue to see interest rates rise. And of course that, the increasing inflation rate, is a hidden tax on people. I say hidden, it's not really hidden. We see it every day, and it affects everyone, and particularly is tough on any of those listening and on maybe your parents and grandparents who've retired and are living on fixed incomes, and people have made plans for their retirement, but in some cases, maybe most cases, they haven't planned for 8.5%, 10% inflation. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to make it really tough for all Americans to get by, but particularly those on limited or fixed incomes. And then we're going to see these higher interest rates that then makes it hard on every American who's trying to buy a car or buy a home or start a business. And these, this interest. But we have to hope that the Fed continues to move quickly. It would be great if the administration would also back off of some of its inflationary policies and try to address this. And I saw where the president's planning to give a speech on this tomorrow. My fear is that, this president hasn't taken inflation seriously up until now. In fact, he kind of quipped back in the fall last year and then even into this year when asked about inflation, and people were talking about, well, do you think Build Back Better, which would have spent another $5 trillion? Imagine where our inflation rate would be right now if that had passed, and if the government was pumping trillions more into the economy when it was already overheated. And so that's where we are. Of course, feeding into this is the price of fuel going up, and we know that's, again, a direct result of the misplaced policies of the Biden administration. His very first act was to stop the Keystone Pipeline, and to then, in those first hours of his administration, he rolled back the drilling on government lands, and then more quietly, but just as damaging to our energy production, is that the regulatory agencies of the Biden administration have essentially shut down the exploration for new oil and gas across this country. And we know, because President Trump proved, this country can be energy independent. And in just the short space of the Trump administration, we became energy independent for the first time in my lifetime, in our lifetimes, U-turn.
I know.
We can get back to that.
I know, and it's so interesting too, because whenever they started releasing the oil reserves, you saw the price go down a little bit, and now it's all back up. But that oil reserve release is still going on, correct? And
That's right.
It's like it's such a shell game, where it's for 1 minute it's like, oh well, the prices came down because they opened the oil reserves. Well, now it's right back up, and they're still doing what they said was going to alleviate it, and we all know it's just a lie. But it's quite frustrating. God bless you. You're up there in the middle of it. We pray for you, and we just appreciate all that you do. Anything you want to say as we finish up the show here? We've got just a few minutes. Anything that you wanted to come to the table with that we haven't had a chance to talk about?
Well, I always want to say, and so I'll take this moment to say, I really appreciate the chance to represent the people of the 6th District of Tennessee, and particularly the good folks of Robertson County. And, I was over a few weeks ago to visit and spoke to the Republican dinner over in Robertson County, and I'm going to miss the interaction with all of the people there, and it's been a great honor and privilege to represent Robertson County, and I'm sorry I won't continue to be able to do that, but please know that we're going to run through the tape, so I continue to represent Robertson County through January 3rd next year, and so anybody who has an issue, don't hesitate to bring that to us, or just opinions they want to share, but particularly if you have some problem working with the federal government, I hope you'll reach out to our office over in Gallatin, or our office in Washington, or try to get a hold of me, and you can go to us at John. I always have to think about it. I don't say it enough. johnrose.house.gov online, and you can find all of our contact information. And we're going to continue to work hard to make sure that we have the representation that Robertson County deserves. And I would just try to end on a positive note, U-turn, and say, our forebears gave us this great system of government, and you've heard me say this before, but we should always keep this in mind. As bad as things get, we need to remember that we've got a system of government that ultimately puts power in the hands of the people, and we need to protect that. And one of the ways we protect that is by staying informed, by going out and voting, and making sure that we have leaders that we hold responsible for doing what we, the people, want them to do. And as long as we continue to do that, there'll be ups and downs, but we'll know that we can reclaim this government for the people by speaking up and electing folks who will implement the will of the people.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, brother. And thank you again. And we got to give a shout out a couple of times to your amazing staff, because everybody's going to miss you, but everybody's going to miss old Ray Render too. He's on the comments here. Cause I hear that an awful lot. Everybody loves your entire team, and Ray has done a fabulous job representing you and carrying, being a deputy for you out here. And we're going to surely miss Ray as well. So I got to give a shout out to him too this morning.
You're kind to say that. Ray does a great job, and
he's fabulous. Yeah,
so proud of our team, and we'll still be around, hopefully, so able to offer some help and help route people to the right place to get answers even after January 3rd.
Absolutely.
So don't hesitate to keep in touch.
Absolutely. I got to watch those little ones and watch these boys grow up. They're going to be fun to watch. So thank you, brother. Give our love to Chelsea, and we'll be praying for you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks, U-turn.
God bless. Thank you. Congressman John Rose joining us as he does every month on the second Monday of the month. He joins us. So just keep that in mind, that he's always available and ready to answer your questions. If you want to give him a call, he would, or if you want to reach out to me, and if you have some questions that you want to share with him for next month, because he'll be back in here for, until the end of the year. And then we'll be switching over to Congressman Mark Green. And so anyway, we're just well represented, and we appreciate your office, John. And before we go, though, I do need to talk about Corbin Creek Greenhouse Gifts and Gardening Center. I was there Friday. I did not get to go by for the Customer Appreciation Day on Monday. Or on Saturday, because I had family commitments. But oh my goodness, they had a great time, and it was the 25th anniversary, and just so much fun stuff. I was there on Friday. Bought some lavender for my mother, planted that this weekend for her, and some other things. I had some questions. Mom is one of those. She has these built-in flower beds right there on her patio at her house. And so, as she's gotten older, oh my goodness, her flowers over the years have been just spectacular and beautiful. It's a little bit harder for her to work on them. So, I asked Amy, I said, what could we put in these flower boxes that would be, more trouble-free type thing? And I can't tell you the name of the plant, but she pointed me to some stuff, and I took it to Mother as part of her Mother's Day gift. And she was like, oh, those might really work. So we put them in the flower boxes, and we're going to kind of watch them and see how they go, and just appreciate so much that I can go out and talk to Amy about recommendations for a different spot or a different point in my yard or for my mother's yard that we need some special help, and she's always got the answer. They're just so helpful, and just part of the One Street Over family. We appreciate you, and they are, of course, at the farmers markets now. The farmers market started this weekend, and you can go and you can find them there. But great stuff happening at Corbin Creek Greenhouse Gifts and Gardening Center. They're open Monday through Saturday from 9 to 6:30. Sunday they're open from 12 to 6:30. You can call them if you have questions. 615-384-3185. 615-384-3185. Yes, Robertson County CBD. Don't forget, that's your source. If you want products for CBD that can be a game changer in your arthritis, if you have anything that's inflammation driven, you have trouble sleeping, this is a Robertson County product made here, and it's good stuff, folks. Just go and check it out. It's been a game changer for me. They're at 4920 Highway 161, 4920 Highway 161 for Corbin Creek Greenhouse, our friends and sponsors. When you get by there, always tell them U-turn sent you, and that wraps it up. We're just a little bit over, having talked to the Congressman. Dr. Chris Causey, Director of our schools, will be here tomorrow. Thank you for joining us. This is 1100 WSGI. God bless.
SOS, I'm a castaway, trying to make it back home.